Yeah, Cheryl said it froze.
Okay, so Shermon, we are live back in another session at the Global Summit. Sorry, and this time we have the APF members, also Shermon and Tanja, who are sitting on the board. I'm not sure about Jaqueline, but I'm sure all of you are part of the APF. So this session is with all the APF members, and it's going to be about asking a futurist. So the important thing in here is remember that in order for them, for the APF or a member of the APF to be answering your questions, you should be posting them in the comments. So they are going to be going through them and give you the perspective, their opinion, on how things work on that question. So Shermon, I leave you here and leading the conversation while the rest of the people are joining in the chat. Sorry, in the session. And remember that there is a little delay in between the live stream, what you see, and what people see. It tends to be something in between 10 to 20, 25 seconds. Okay, so when you ask something, it usually comes like a half a minute after you ask. Okay, so I leave you here and enjoy it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Miguel. So welcome to the APF session, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from Manila. It's like around 8:30 in Manila now. So this is the session wherein, we can have an open conversation, anything about futures and professional foresight. So most of us are members of the Association of Professional Futurists, and we would like to have a conversation with you about the futures of foresight and professional foresight in the context, of course, in the context of competency, projects and experiences, anything under the sun. So let me introduce myself first. Of course, I'm Shermon Cruz. I'm currently the chair of the Association of Professional Futurists, and I've been doing futures and foresight work for the last 12 years as the director of the Center for Engaged Foresight. I would like to turn this over now to Tanja, and then Tanja kindly invite anyone from the group who might want to pitch in.
Yeah, thank you, Sherman. I'm Tanja Schindler, based in Berlin in Germany. I'm currently the vice chair of the APF and also the founder and guardian of FutureSpace online community. And I'm currently leading a new project that is called Stories from 2050. I've been doing foresight for over 7 years now, I think. I did my Master's of Strategic Foresight at the Swinburne University in Melbourne almost 6 years ago now, and also been working before that in corporate and did foresight actually before I studied it. And so I have both perspectives, now being a freelancing futurist and back then being an organizational futurist. And I'm really excited to be here and to explore a bit more, how do you see of the futurist and what was your journey? And I hand it over to Jaqueline.
Oh, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm in Brazil, and I have a consulting for companies and a school, independent school of foresight and future studies. We have now more than 2,000 people talking about futures studies and foresight, 100 foresight practitioners, and 300 people learning about what is futures literacy in our labs. And we help companies to look at the long term and build with methodology, because foresight is not a new subject in Brazil, but in company it is very new. So we have to educate people and teach tools and methodologies and framework. I learned foresight with Dr. Sohail, my partner in certification. in Turku with Rosa Alegria, Peter Bishop from Houston. And I traveled around the world to see all the methodologies and to bring it in Portuguese, because we have a great challenge. Most of people don't speak English and don't know the difference about innovation and methodologies of foresight. And we are very happy this year because we have great companies in strategic foresight processes, and we have first HR who are learning methodologies of foresight in company in Latin America, labs of digital consumer and health, and we are academic and we're in the field doing things to the future. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm an APF member, WFSCF member also, and it's a great pleasure.
Jaqueline, your pick.
Sorry?
Yeah, you get to pick the next.
Hi everyone. I'm Mauricio Hernández. I'm based in Mexico City. I'm a futurist and economist. I've been working for maybe more than 20 years with government and public administration. But since I started working with Foresight and Futurists, that has become my passion. It's my passion 100%. So right now, I'm the founder of a new effort and project to spread futures literacy here in Latin America. It's called Universidad del Futuro. And basically, we are trying to spread futures literacy in Spanish all around Latin America. And I'm a member of the APF. I'm also a member of the WFSF. And I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Mauricio, of course. Cheryl is the last person who gets to introduce herself. Cheryl?
Hi, thank you, and good to see everybody. My name is Cheryl Chung. I'm the Program Director of Executive Education Singapore Futures at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy here in Singapore. So my own background is I specialize in public policy, so we work very much with governments, on kind of long-term strategy, foresight, strategic foresight, that kind of thing. So we are currently basically in training, right? Training and consulting with Singapore as well as regional governments in the area of foresight work. My own background is in the Singapore government, where we've got quite an established futures practice, so have spent quite a number of years in different ministry portfolios, looking at futures work, from industry development portfolios at the Ministry of Trade to the Prime Minister's office at the Center for Strategic Futures, and then most recently at the Ministry of Transport doing autonomous vehicles. So delighted to be with all of you today and looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, thank you very much, Cheryl. And of course, our friends who are watching this live on YouTube, feel free to. This is an Ask a Futurist session. You can ask any questions that you have in mind about futures thinking, futurist and professional foresight, anything related to professional foresight practice, or including tools and methods, anything under the sun, anything under the future sun, you can ask anything. But I would like to start with a question. It's a foundational question that all of you might want to, of course, could answer. Is that, of course, there is what we call the Association of Professional Futurists as a professional foresight practitioner. So the context here is really about, it is anchored in the context of a competency. And of course, professions can be broadly defined as an occupation that are at least nominally self-governing, that requires a level of knowledge and independent judgment. That's according to Parkinson Institute in 2016. Now, given that you've been practicing foresight, practicing futurists for several number of years, I would like to ask Cheryl first on this: how do you see foresight evolve over the years? Like, for example, a decade ago and now, in terms of professional foresight practice.
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. I mean, I to be honest, I see a very very specific view of foresight, which is the public sector application of it. And I think it does go through phases, where sometimes I think there's a lot of energy around foresight work, and and then sometimes, of course, it goes to where maybe it's a little bit more urgent, right? Looking at more urgent issues, and then maybe not so much of a priority on foresight work. I think we're currently in a phase, also because of COVID, where I think a lot of governments are starting to relook at the value of having a futures practice in an organization, and specifically as an institutional function. So I think that's also becoming quite interesting, because I would say maybe even 3 years ago, it might be a little bit more difficult to convince a senior management that the future might be different from the present, but it's very easy today to convince them of that. Having said that, I do think that there is I would say, emphasis on the futures to strategy insight part of the work. And that's something that I think has doubled down in terms of importance over definitely the last 3 to 5 years, where people are starting to ask a lot of questions about the impact of foresight work. What does it mean to translate the insights into action, into present day things that we can do? So especially in the policy world, there is, I would say, starting to be a closer synergy with policy innovation, and trying to look at different kind of ways of also thinking about how we might be innovative and prepared for the future through innovative practice after we've kind of looked into the future's insights, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Jaqueline, Mauricio.
Yeah, I see. I just can't talk about Brazil because it's my main experience. I see that I heard the first time a futurist talking in 2012. It was José Cordeiro, our friend today. And here in Brazil, I think that this profession is just started. There is a lot of confusion about what is a futurist, what we do. And I think more and more people would like to know. With the pandemic, I see that it becomes an urgent subject, and now maybe people understand. And I think we are gaining space now. But here for us, there is a big difference about just talking about the future, and people who really know that we have tools to talk and to look about the future and to come back to the present. To really build the future with tools, with methodology, and I think we are in a spread way going. So I think that the world needs more and more futurists, and this is an important profession. Companies are learning about it, and I think in 10 years we have now a respectful space. This is my perception.
Thank you very much, Jaqueline, on that. Now, there are questions are coming in the chat box, and I would like to ask Tanja and Mauricio about this. It's from Amos Taylor. Her question is: as futures becomes hopefully more mainstream, including futurist thinking, design futures, foresight, and literacy, what is the role of the professional futurist then? What could it be?
Well, my opinion, in my case, I've been working with public administration and government agency, and I think one of our main roles is to be advisors for them, just in terms of anticipation, prevention of especially the good futures that you want, and avoiding the bad futures that you don't want. And I think that here in Mexico, it's been growing in the last years. We have some programs in universities, and it's been growing. And I think right now the role of futurists is just to be very close to decision takers in order to have a better idea of what could happen, to read and learn to read and see the trends and the signals that we are looking at, and then trying to set up some scenarios and trying to figure out what's next. Because I think the big challenge is, once you have the scenarios, what's next? What are the strategies? And what are the actions that you're going to take? And I think that's one of our main challenges for the future in our profession. Just how do you land all your analysis and all your scenarios to take good decisions and to take good strategies. And I think that's one of the main interests from government officials and decision takers, of course, as well for business. I think that's one of our main roles now, like just to help them to take good decisions right now in the present, but based in a good analysis of future scenarios and so on.
Thank you. Yeah, I would add to that I really see that we also need to create more outreach as futurists. I always say we're sometimes a bit bad at our own marketing, and we have created a little bubble within the APF and the WSFF, and we know each other within the field, but speaking to the outside world still seems a bit disconnected. And I hope that we can create within the next years really more attention and potential to doing this, because I believe really everyone should be able to think like a futurist. And by bringing this into the mainstream, I also see this is quite a different what a futurist or foresight practitioner is. We are not the general consultant that goes in, tells the organization what the future will be or the processes and goals, because we're working really deeply with them and we're fostering them that the organization itself learns futures and foresight capabilities, so that even when we go, they can continue the work. And I think this is something that is truly impassioned for most of the futurists. And this is probably something we also need to promote definitely and say what is really the role of a professional futurist. And it's not to tell you the future, it's enabling you to have a conversation about the future within your organization, and then to put in some strategic action in place to hopefully be exploring alternative futures while also shaping your preferred future. And yeah, I would like to pick another question that was here in the chat from Cruz, from Berlin, actually. And he asked, what workshop you gave sparked most enthusiasm amongst the non-futurist audience? And as I also found interesting what I said, we need to reach out to the ones outside of your bubble. So what workshops did some of you gave outside when people really new to foresight, and how did you create their enthusiasm for it?
Yeah. Anyone can answer the question.
Okay, I can try. We have a lot of futurists and professionals of future, but we have a great audience. They want to know about the future. Actually, the main question is always how will look the future, and I think Mauricio and Tanja had speak very well about our role. So I think we have to take the foresight to more sexy approaches. We have to connect the future and translate the future to the audience, and they want to know. They are very interested in know. And our role in company or outside company is guide, is invite them, is activate imagination, like UNESCO teaches about futures literacy, and then create this environment to take decisions, not just one person. The decision makers in company are very important. But today, everyone is interested in future. They want to know what is the future, how will they like, what should I do? So we have to go to the audience and talk about their interest, not about our techniques to build the future. I have to do this a lot, and it works. So I connect our subject with them necessity needs. So if they want to know about jobs, I will talk about jobs. Then I go to the future. So I think this is a great strategy. We have to go closer. In Brazil, we have this foresight discipline, always in academic or in government, closed to the audience. Now I think we have to talk with everyone.
I would like to add in that part, like, I think that we have to make people understand that basically they are futurists, but they just don't realize about it. Because, for instance, when they brush their teeth, I mean, they're being futurists because they are trying to prevent something, right? So I think we got to take some experiences from daily life or from whatever we do with our daily activities and try to focus on them and tell them, you know what, this that you are doing right now is kind of a futurist thing. So I think we have to do that, and there are a lot of creative ways to do it. I think one of the things that I like the most of Futures and Foresight is that it is a very creative discipline. Imagination is very important, and I think we also have a very important role in here to make people understand that with their daily activities they can be futurists as well. They are.
Maybe I can share a specific workshop. So we've been in this COVID pandemic for more than a year now. But right in the beginning, when we were still in a lot of uncertainty, in what was happening or what was going on, I had the privilege of running a workshop with our Art Science Museum here in Singapore. And it was a really interesting experience because that for me really showed me and showed the audience that futures is actually quite a good anxiety coping mechanism, and especially when we're facing a lot of uncertainty. So we ran this workshop with the curators at the Art Science Museum and some of their team, and talked about what the museum might look like, in the future and a post-COVID future. And I think one thing that was very interesting was that in thinking about the different scenarios, they came back to the fundamental definition of the word curator, which has its roots in this idea of caretaking and caring for people who come through their doors and providing an environment and an atmosphere of care. And that idea helped them reimagine their identity in a post-COVID future. So the idea that, okay, if I don't have exhibitions, if I don't have a physical space, if people can't come to me, how can I still provide this care? And how can I still be this caretaker curator? So that for me was probably in recent memory, one of the more interesting and fun workshops.
Yeah, if I may share, one experience that I had, just to answer the question about sparking a non-futurist audience, is that what I do is that when I begin a Futurist Foresight workshop, I facilitate the Rip Van Winkle exercise. Right, so Rip Van Winkle is a story, right? Like it's a children's story, but then of course it was designed, devised later on, but of course you have some back end there. It's like an assumption-based planning developed by Rand Corporation. It's a pretty highly technical approach to assumption-based planning. But what we did was to design it in a way that you have this Rip Van Winkle story, and then you put them in a situation wherein they slept, for 20 years. Then when they woke up, they suddenly woke up in a brave new world. And then, of course, a robot or a person from the future approached them, and then before they could have a conversation, the person was given, the privilege to ask at least 3 to 5 questions, any question that they want, right, to ask that future person. Because if you go to a foreign land or a new place, of course, the first thing that you'll have to do is to ask people, right, where am I, right, those kind of basic stuff. And then, of course, I try to incorporate the systems thinking into the process. Like they can ask any question on food security, for example, by 2050, or on food sovereignty, or on artificial intelligence, whatever that might be. And then people start asking questions from the future. And then from there, of course, you're going to generate, if you have 30 or 40 people, you'll be having like around 100 questions about artificial intelligence. And then these people will have a conversation about their questions that they're asking and why are they're asking this question. Now, that ignites enthusiasm. If people are given the opportunity to ask the questions that they haven't been asking, before. And after facilitating that conversation, that's where they start to question the future. Like it's some sort of giving them an opportunity to question their assumptions about the future using the questions that they generated themselves. And then you end by the conversation with a philosophical thought that says, the world that we create is driven and shaped by the questions that we ask. Then there are a lot of aha moments. Okay, this is foresight.
I love that. I really do. And I think you hinted... Go ahead, Jaqueline.
Brings a common sense, and I see the question here now. I think the most enthusiasm non-futurist workshop we have here was about how can we build a new country together, because this was a subject for everyone. And we just do a lot of questions, powerful questions. And you don't have to teach anything or give answers. You have to do questions for the non-futurist public audience, because we have to challenge them to think about the future. They don't do this usually. It works a lot.
Yes, thank you. There is another super interesting question from Darwin, and I want to extend a little bit on this. So she's asking, if someone asks a futurist what's their superpowers, that's easy to answer. So he's interested in what's your kryptonite. And I want to extend this a little bit, because I think what most people don't assume is that all futurists have a really diverse background, and we mostly did a different study before we then approached futures. And I would love to hear what your background is that. So I did start with electrical engineering, kind of a different field before I got into futures, because it was not creative for me enough. So what was your background? And dive a little bit into kind of like, the kryptonite superpower, or the different fields you search your passion from, like where Shermon said, from systems thinking as well. And I hand this to Cheryl.
What's the kryptonite? That's a fantastic question. To be honest, my first thought was lack of sleep. And I mean, I'm saying that as a little bit of a joke, but I think where I'm trying to get at is, I think what is kryptonite is when a futurist doesn't have enough time, to kind of be calm, be well rested, and be creative, right? So in seasons when I get insanely busy, then it becomes actually quite difficult to then I become a manager, right, rather than a futurist, which is a slightly different skill set. So that for me is the challenge, and it's a question of how do you remain present when you think about the future for a living. It's not so straightforward. Yeah.
And what's your background? So how did you come into futurism?
So I'm trained as an economist, and as I mentioned, I worked many years in the Singapore Public Service. So I started out as a policy officer, working in land policy and science and tech policy. And it was in that role in science and tech policy where we deal with very long-term planning and very, very big budgets for public sector R&D, that I started to be introduced to this world of strategic foresight, because technology foresight actually really needs to be, and foresight more broadly really needs to be underpinning that kind of level of budgetary planning, right? Because you're talking in the billions of Singapore dollars, which is a lot of money. And through that, it was launched me into this weird and wonderful world of government futures, and that's kind of how I started. Yeah.
No, thank you. Mauricio, how about you?
My kryptonite. Well, I think one of the main problems that you should have when you are a futurist or a foresight practitioner is trying to forecast all the time and trying to say this is exactly what is going to happen. I think that is something that we should not do. We know that we shouldn't try to forecast what is going to happen, but to spread the options, to open alternatives, to imagine what may happen, what could happen, and then you have a lot of options. So I think when you become a kind of an oracle, or you try to become an oracle, that could be your kryptonite, because then you are not doing what a foresight or futurist should do. I mean, that's not what we do. So that's one thing. And the other thing regarding my background, my professional background, well, I am an economist, and then I studied a master's in public administration, and then another master's in international administration and global governance in Sweden, and then I studied a 1-year graduate program in futures studies, and it was amazing because then suddenly everything changed. My mindset changed completely. I mean, I've been doing a lot of work for a lot of years. But then when I realized that we could have another mindset, another way of looking at things regarding the future, that transformed everything. In my life, that was very important. And regarding one of the questions that I was reading, like how our work is recognized in society. I think you can make that when you share what you know and what you think about the future and the way you are thinking about the future, and when you make people realize of the importance of open alternatives for the future. I think that's when you are recognized. But it's not the main thing, of course. I mean, that's not what you are looking for. What you are looking for is basically that people can recognize how they can transform their future working from their present. I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you. How about you, Jaqueline?
Well, this is a very nice question. I have a lot of competencies that I'm building, but maybe I will be provocative. I think that my meditation state, it's fundamental. My observation state is fundamental. I don't work anymore with my mind and just with my heart and my soul, because I knew tools, I knew strategics, but I woke up every day to learn something. I am an unlearned lady for sure. And I know that I don't know anything, but I know a lot. So I go into this flow with the universe, with the dynamic of life. Then I can see things and can connect points and can touch the soul of the ones who make the transformation with my tool. I think this is my work now, meta competencies.
Yeah, if I may quickly share my kryptonite, there are two ways in which I look at it. Of course, using, for example, the Association of Professional Foresight competency model, right? The futurist competencies, like you have framing, scanning, futuring, visioning, designing, and adapting. Perhaps the question of Darwin is in the context of a facilitator. Like, I would like to answer this in the context of the futurist as a facilitator. And I would like to pick up from what Jaqueline has said about being an observer, right? Is the question about the futurist learning how to let go. Right. I think that is something that I need to learn as a facilitator and as a futurist, because when they call you, right, they have this high expectation to you as a futurist. You're going to facilitate the conversation, so forth and so on. And then it's all about learning how to let go. When do you step back? When do you intervene? Right. It's a flow. So that is a continuing learning process. But adapting to the moment, I think, is something that I need to learn further. Like Patricia Lustig's approach of appreciative inquiry, right? Like being in the moment.
Yes.
Okay, if I may pick the next question. Yeah, there are a lot of interesting questions here. Now, I would like to go back to the question of Maria O'Brien. I'm sorry if I'm not saying your name correctly. It's about energy, and this question is perhaps a little bit epistemic. The question I'm asking at this point in time is whether we have the energy to really get a handle on what's happening in existential reality versus material reality. I don't know exactly what the question is, but I would like to put that in the context of energy. Yeah, anyone would like to respond to that?
To really get a handle of what's happening is, I can try, because I think if we don't consider existential reality, the material has not any importance. So we are all talking about tools, methodologies, discipline, futures, literacy. But for me, the future is an art state, and we have to look beyond the planet, or we have to the planet, to the human beings. I'm a neo-humanist. And I think that the power of my tools are when I look to the existential needs from people, because we are all at the same home. We cannot talk about material, just material, without connecting it with the existential future. I'm sorry. And I think this is the great magic, Mary O'Brien. Tools and frameworks. It's okay. Our role is guide people, not to do what they have to say, not to participate in decisions. But when you have a vision, a powerful vision, you are talking about human existence in this planet and about your life. So I think this is the magic. We have to put the energy in the right place. I think a lot of countries are talking a lot of technology, a lot of economics, a lot of innovation, and less of what are we really experience at this time of pandemic. We are creating a new world. So we have to have this energy, we have to meditate, we have to be sure who we are and where we are going. And I think the energy comes from this kind of hope and this kind of vision. We have to touch souls. The planet has animals, has plants, has his challenges, okay, but the future is human for all humans. So I don't have a tip how you can do this, but my kind of foresight practitioner is we have to look first at human needs, then the material who is around.
Thank you. Does anyone wants to add something to that? Otherwise, we're going to the next question. Okay, then let's pick the next question. This is one from Claudia, and she's asking, do you have any methodologies that you prefer to co-create with your clients? And I found this super interesting because I recently also really been fascinated and seeing participatory futures and really opening the space for having the conversations and hacking some of the methods, but not really sticking all to traditional methodologies. So how do you open the space for co-creation in futures? Who wants to answer that?
Maybe I can start. So one of the things is maybe more amusing than a real answer, but one of the things that we've been working on a lot is to work with youth, right? And to bring them into a process to help them both understand public policy frameworks, but also futures frameworks, right? And it's a little bit kind of thinking about the previous question about this kind of existential questions, right? It's how do we also kind of step outside from our maybe lived experience for a little bit and try to have a bit of a meta level conversation, about what is happening. And maybe I'll just offer one observation about co-creation, especially with young people. So the very first time I did this, such a workshop, I had put together, a bunch of material for people to prototype and kind of create artifacts for the future. And the first thing I realized was my own bias around what were cognitive tools, right? So a lot of the things I provided would have favored or biased towards, somebody who is thinking in their heads rather than thinking with their hands or thinking, so that to me was also a real reminder that the methodology also has to be inclusive, right? And that if we are thinking seriously about our genuine desire to have participatory foresight and to co-create, then we have to meet our clients or our partners where they're at, And in some cases, it's tough to think about the future, right? If you don't have this practice, if you've never done it before, if you are very stressed, it can be difficult. So how do we create that safe space and a kind of inclusive environment for this co-creation to happen? I think that for me is my big question.
In my case, I like very much scenario planning and scenario creation with people, and I like co-creation with stakeholders, because since you do the impact analysis and you choose what are the most important factors in the problems that you are dealing with, that's one thing, because everybody comes up with some ideas and different ideas of what's the most important thing to be taken into account. And once you have done the impact analysis, then you choose the critical uncertainties, like what are the most important factors you are working with before creating your scenarios. And then you do this. I work a lot with this matrix of 2x2, and I take my two critical uncertainties and tell people like we have to create our scenarios here. And I like it very much because they are very participative. They participate a lot, and they are very creative when they are writing the narratives of the scenarios, of the futures scenarios. And I think I like that very much because, again, imagination and creativity become very important in this phase of the whole technique. And in the end, it's very good because people feel like they created the whole thing. I mean, you were just a facilitator, and I think that's the most important thing. Like they own the work, and then it is easier for them to use it directly in whatever they are doing with that after our workshop, for instance. So this is what I like the most.
I prefer. I have a lot more fun with environmental scanning than the Futures wheel. It's very funny. It's very nice to them. Then we go to scenarios. Then I like the CLA because with the CLA we jump to scenarios to a great vision, and it works a lot with a lot of people. They love it, and they just see clearly how they can go to the present for the future. And of course, then they ask how. But I think scanning, environmental scanning, Futures wheel, cross impact if you want, and then scenarios and CLA, it's amazing.
Yeah, just quickly, what framework, or I would say framework that I would love to co-create is the UNESCO Futures Literacy Framework. The reveal, reframe, consolidating insights and next steps. The UNESCO Futures Literacy Framework is really customizable. It's just that you just have to design it in using that journey from revealing what's obvious, probable, desirable, reframing what's probable and desirable by identifying the tools and methods that might fit your purpose, as long as it enables people to actually reframe imaginings about the future. And then in the reframing process, you get to generate a lot of insights. And phase 3 is all about consolidating all of these insights and just identifying what might be the probable next steps that you could do in a post workshop session. And then now I'm going to get to choose the next question, and perhaps Tanja can answer this first. It's from Luis Henrique. Your work is open to a wide range of disciplines. You collaborate, join forces, combine math, sci-fi, and humanities. This should be a key track for children, including the work ethic. Any thoughts?
Including children in that?
Tanja, can you put the question on screen, please?
Yeah, I think will happen in a second. So what I can tell, and I think almost every futurist agrees, that we have, of course, to start with teaching futures in schools. And there are great initiatives like Teach the Future. Here in Germany, we also have something called the Zukunftsbauer. And I was part of that for 6 months. And it's just amazing how much creativity, but inspiration is within those kids to create those new futures once you empower them that they can actually do. But then saying this, I think this runs to person at any age, because we learned in school how to think about history and the past, and no one told us how about think about the future. And I think this is the most powerful that I see. Yes, those methods and the frameworks that we have, they help us to reduce complexity. But really understanding that, for example, we don't call about one future, there's always multiple futures, and that everything that has happened in the future is still decided in the present, empowers so many people that there is not one pathway that we have to go, but alternatives that we can co-create. And this is, for me, one of the really, really why I'm doing this. And there was another similar question asked, how do you feel the wave and observing the wave about the present, the past, and the future? And I think this is exactly what we do. In the Futurists, we try to come up and help people, they can make better decisions in the present. And as the future is and remains uncertain, I love the word serve. I always use, as I've been a dancer, dancing with the uncertainty. So we cannot predict what happens there. So rather train our brain to cope with many possibilities, figure out what we actually want to shape, and then dance a little bit in the uncertainty, whatever comes, until we feel really comfortable and being in this sphere. Yeah. How about someone else?
I see the question here, and the Teach the Future it's a nice project. They are in Brazil also, and they are trying to go into schools, but we have now a lot of problems with schools. They are closed and open again and closed. But it is a challenge because we have teachers, they are very resistant. We have the father and the mother, they are very resistant, but I think the children, they are natural futurists. They are free to imagine it, and they are really able to imagine. But I think we have to go into the schools, and I think in the future we teach foresight in schools. This is my hope, and this is why I'm working for.
You know, I really love what Tanja said about dancing with uncertainty, and I think if there's something I want to take away from this discussion that we've had, it might be that. So we work with some local high schools, and one particular one has a 12-week Foresight program that we partner with them. And I think in the last 3 years working with them, my big reflection is that we need to be teaching our young people that there are multiple futures in which they can thrive. And maybe I say this because the Singapore education system is particularly brutal, you know, and it's you know, very high, it can be very high strung and anxiety ridden, you know, but you have even extremely high performing kids thinking, oh, I need to be a doctor, if not, it's like, you know, disaster, right? But actually the reality is that there can be so many futures under which they are thriving and happy and successful by broad definitions of success, you know. And I think that if the world of futures can give the world of young people and education something, I think that would be it, you know, to give them frameworks to be able to say that, you know, actually the future is a wonderful playground to dance with uncertainty in.
Yeah, it definitely should be part of the school's curricula, both in public, private schools, everywhere, and especially in nations where there are a lot of economic differences, social difference, and so on. I think it's important that the people that is not living in economic conditions, or that should not be an impediment for them to know about the future and to think about the future and to study about the future. I think it's very important to focus on that part of the population in all our countries.
Do you want to share your take on that, Shermon?
No, not now. Sorry. Yeah,
No worries,
let me ask
then.
the next question. I was listening to Mauricio, and hey, there's Miguel now.
Yes,
Yeah.
he can take
telling
one round of quick answer to one question that you choose, and you do one round of quick answering that, and we wrap the sessions. Which is the question you want to answer?
Yeah, perhaps from Guillermina by in a past, you know, I think this is a very important question. Who determines a professional futurist, and why some methods and tools are professionals and others are not?
Hey, now you have to do that in like one tweet, each of you.
I would say.
Each one,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
in a tweet. Perfect.
I had this person in UNESCO. I'm sorry, Tanja. I'm sorry.
No, go. No,
I
you
had
go.
in UNESCO. Hi, Guillermina. And the conclusion of the group was the market will define who is a good futurist and who is not, because I think certification and this kind of thing not always make the rules. So I think the market, the public, the audience, the client.
Yeah, for me, you know, I could tweet it, Miguel, like in 2 words, you know, integrity and the reputation.
My word would be portfolio, you know, so track record of doing consistently good, high quality work. Yeah.
I would say people and reality.
Yeah, and I could like to wrap this up in saying probably starting the conversation about the future rather than trying to predict the future. But it is a topic that, of course, at the APF, we want to discuss and to figure out. So we really also are in transitional phase and redefining what is the APF and what is also does it mean to be a professional futurist. So I want you all to invite being part of this. And if you go to the apf.org, there is a banner that's called Futures Reimagined. Feel free to join that if you're interested in becoming a member or becoming one of our volunteers that is proactively now kind of being part of transitioning the APF and figuring out what is the organization we want to be and want to build. And it is members driven, so we invite all members and all future members to be part of that.
So now that almost all of you said that the market, the reputation, the people, the reality, the portfolio, the expertise, something that you can show, it's like a perfect cue to start our next session with Wendy Schultz, which has almost every single attribute that you enumerated. So she is not only that, but also a legend. So we are closing this session, and thank you everyone for being here. And we are going to start the next session now, again in the Global Foresight Summit with Wendy Schultz. Thank you so much, and thank you everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.